The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with fear and panic like never before in its 1,000-year history. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their special chairs, each one made for their unique body shapes. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others had wings or multiple eyes, but all of them showed the same emotion on their alien faces: terror. Ambassador Ji-Wan walked slowly to the center of the massive room. Her black hair was tied back in a simple knot, and she wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Around her, hundreds of alien beings watched with their various types of eyes. Some glowed, some were as big as dinner plates, and some could see colors that humans could not even imagine. The holographic screens around the hall showed pictures that made even the bravest alien warriors shake with fear. Entire star systems had been turned into empty space, with nothing left but floating rocks and dead planets. The images showed massive black shapes moving through space like hungry sharks in an ocean of stars. The Vorthak swarm has destroyed 12 complete solar systems in just 30 days, Ji-Wan said in a clear, strong voice that carried to every corner of the huge chamber. Their bioships number in the millions, maybe tens of millions. They move from system to system, eating everything they find, and they are heading straight for the core worlds where most of our civilizations live. A ripple of scared sounds went through the assembled aliens. Some made clicking noises, others hummed low tones, and a few released chemical smells that their translators could not convert into words. The universal translation devices worked. Hard to turn all these different forms of communication into something everyone could understand. Council Speaker Thyron stood up from his crystal throne. His body was made of what looked like living glass, and light moved through him in patterns that showed his emotional state. Right now, those patterns were flashing red and orange, the colors of fear and desperation in his species. The combined military forces of the Altarian Republic and the Zenthari Federation engaged the swarm at the Kepler 442 system, Thyron announced, his crystalline voice ringing like broken bells. Both fleets were completely destroyed in less than 4 hours. Over 10,000 ships gone. The swarm's biovessels absorbed our energy weapons and adapted to our tactics faster than our computers could calculate new strategies. In the Observer, section high above the main floor, Captain Minho leaned forward in his seat. He was a tall man with short black hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. Next to him sat Commander Suyung, a woman with intelligent eyes who had been studying the alien species and their technologies since Earth joined the Galactic Council. "They are not even asking for our help," Minho whispered to Suyung in Korean, knowing that most aliens could not understand their language without translation devices. "They think we are too primitive," Suyung replied quietly. "To them, we are like children playing with sticks while adults fight with laser weapons." This was not entirely wrong. Earth had only been part of the Galactic Council for 50 standard years, which was considered a very short time by most alien species who measured their civilizations in thousands or tens of thousands of years. When the first alien ships had arrived at Earth, they had been shocked to find a species that was still using chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Most galactic species had evolved on what humans called garden worlds, planets with gentle weather, abundant food, and very few dangerous creatures. Their evolution had been peaceful and slow, developing technology and culture over vast periods of time without major threats or disasters. Earth was different. Earth was what the galactic community called a death world, a planet where everything seemed designed to kill any life that tried to survive there. The weather was violent and unpredictable. The animals were aggressive predators, and even the plants had developed ways to poison or trap other living things. But somehow humans had not just survived on this deadly world. They had thrived. They had learned to hunt the dangerous predators, to predict and survive the violent weather, and to turn the planet's deadly resources into tools for their own survival. General Quelix of the Altarian Republic was speaking now. He was a tall, thin being with blue skin and 4 arms, each one ending in hands that had too many fingers. His species had been spacefaring for over 8,000 years and considered themselves among the most advanced military forces in the galaxy. "We have tried every weapon in our arsenal," Quelix said, his voice filled with defeat. "Energy cannons, plasma torpedoes, gravitational disruptors, even experimental quantum bombs. The swarm absorbs the energy from our weapons and uses it to make themselves stronger. Their bioships learn from every attack and develop defenses within minutes. What about biological weapons? Asked Representative Vrex from the Korthian Empire. Vrex looked like a giant insect with purple chitin covering his body. Useless, replied Dr. Zentik, a floating jellyfish-like creature who served as the Council's chief scientist. The swarm's biology is unlike anything we have encountered. They can adapt to any biological attack faster than we can deploy it. It is as if they have been designed specifically to counter every form of warfare that civilized species use. Ji-Wan had been listening to all of this with growing frustration. She looked up at Captain Minho and Commander Su-Young in the observer section and saw them making small hand gestures, military sign language that they had learned during their service in Earth's armed forces. The message was clear. Request? Permission to speak? Ji-Wan took a deep breath and stepped forward again. The massive chamber fell silent as she raised her hand to request attention from Speaker Thyron. The Terran delegation requests permission to address the Council, she said formally. A wave of what could only be described as surprised amusement went through the alien representatives. Several of them made sounds that the translators converted into chuckles or laughs. The idea that the primitive humans might have something useful to contribute to this crisis seemed almost funny to them. Speaker Thyron's crystalline form flickered with colors that indicated polite condescension. Of course, Ambassador Ji-Wan. The Council always welcomes input from all member species regardless of their level of technological development. Ji-Wan felt a flash of anger at the barely hidden insult, but she kept her face calm and professional. She had been trained for this kind of diplomatic work, and she knew that showing emotion would only confirm the aliens' opinion that humans were too primitive and unstable to be taken seriously. Thank you, Speaker Thyron, she replied with perfect diplomatic politeness. I would like to call forward Admiral Hyunwoo of the Terran Defense Force to provide the Council with Earth's analysis of the Vorthak swarm threat. Admiral Hyunwoo stood up in the observer section and began walking down the long stairway to the main floor. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and a face that had seen many battles. Unlike the sleek energy-based weapons that other species carried, he wore simple projectile firearms on his belt, weapons that most aliens considered primitive and barbaric. As he walked, conversations broke out among the alien representatives. Most of them had never seen a human military officer up close, and they were curious about this species that had managed to survive on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Look at how he moves, whispered Counselor Hexus of the Draconian Confederacy to her neighbor. Like a predator that is always ready to fight. His weapons are so crude, replied Senator Quilop from the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. Chemical explosives and metal projectiles. How quaint. Admiral Hyunwoo reached the center of the chamber and stood next to Ambassador Ji-Wan. He looked around at the assembled aliens with calm, steady eyes that had seen horrors that most of these peaceful species could not imagine. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded others in life-and-death situations. I have studied the reports of your encounters with the Vorthak swarm. I have analyzed their tactics, their biology, and their methods of adaptation. He paused, letting his words sink in. The chamber was completely quiet now, with hundreds of alien beings waiting to hear what this primitive human might have to say about a threat that had defeated their most advanced civilizations. You are fighting them wrong, Admiral Hyunwoo said simply. The silence that followed was so complete that the only sounds were the quiet hums and clicks of the translation devices working to convert his words into the hundreds of different languages represented in the chamber. Finally, General Quellick stood up, his forearms gesturing in what was clearly disbelief and anger among his people. Human, he said, his voice filled with condescension. Your species has barely achieved faster than light travel. You still use chemical rockets for most of your space transportation. Your weapons are primitive projectile devices that we abandoned thousands of years ago. What could you possibly know about fighting an enemy that has defeated civilizations with technology far beyond anything your world has ever produced? Admiral Hyunwoo smiled, and something in that expression made several of the alien representatives step back instinctively. It was not a friendly smile or a polite diplomatic smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted prey that did not yet yaoi rao. The words hung in the air like a challenge that no one in the great chamber wanted to accept. Admiral Hyunwoo stood in the center of the room, surrounded by hundreds of alien beings who represented the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and he had just told them that they had forgotten something as basic as warfare. General Quelix made a sound that his translator converted into an angry snort. His forearms moved in gestures that clearly meant he thought the human was either insane or incredibly arrogant. "Forgotten how to make war?" Quelix repeated, his blue skin darkening with what was obviously anger among his people. "Human, the Altarian Republic has maintained the most powerful military force in this sector for over 3,000 years. We have fought 17 different conflicts and won every single one of them." Admiral Hyunwoo nodded politely, as if he was listening to a child explain how they had won a game at school. "Yes, General. I have read the reports of your conflicts," he replied. "Very civilized wars, all of them. You fight with rules of engagement that protect civilian populations. You use weapons designed to disable enemy ships rather than destroy them completely. You accept surrender and treat prisoners with respect according to galactic law. You fight wars that you expect to end with peace treaties and diplomatic solutions." He paused and looked around the chamber again, his eyes stopping on different alien representatives as he spoke. "Those are not wars, General. Those are disagreements, settled with advanced technology." Speaker Thyron's crystalline form was flashing with colors that indicated confusion and growing irritation. "Admiral Hyunwoo," the council speaker said, his voice ringing with the authority of his office. "Perhaps you could explain what you believe we should be doing differently, rather than simply criticizing our methods." Behind Admiral Hyunwoo, a series of holographic displays activated. The images they showed made many of the alien representatives make sounds of shock and disgust. The displays showed scenes from Earth's history, but not the peaceful parts that had been included in humanity's application to join the Galactic Council. The first image showed human warriors in ancient times, carrying weapons made of sharpened metal and fighting in formations that were designed to kill as many enemies as possible in the shortest amount of time. These were not the neat, organized battles that galactic civilizations fought, where opposing forces tried to outmaneuver each other with minimal casualties. The second image showed a battlefield covered with smoke and fire, where human soldiers, in primitive uniforms, were shooting at each other with chemical-powered weapons, while explosions went off all around them. The ground was torn up by artillery shells, and the very air seemed poisoned by the chemicals being used. The third image showed something that made several aliens actually leave their seats and move toward the exits. It was a view of Earth from space during one of humanity's global wars, showing entire continents lit up with the flashes of nuclear explosions. "This is what war looks like when survival is the only thing that matters," Admiral Hyunwoo explained calmly, as if he was discussing the weather instead of scenes of mass destruction. "For most of human history, we did not fight to gain territory or resources or political advantage. We fought because if we lost, our entire people would be wiped out completely." Dr. Minji stepped forward to join Admiral Hyunwoo at the center of the chamber. She was a small woman with intelligent eyes who served as humanity's chief expert on alien biology and psychology. In her hands, she carried a data pad that contained information that would change how the galactic community thought about warfare forever. "The Vorthak swarm operates according to biological principles that every human child learns in school," Dr. Minji said, her voice clear and confident. "They are like the predator species on Earth: sharks, wolves, big cats, and thousands of others. They hunt in groups, they adapt quickly to new situations, and they never stop attacking until their prey is dead." She activated another holographic display that showed comparative images of Earth's predators next to the bioships of the Vorthak swarm. "Look at the similarities," she continued. "Pack hunting behavior, rapid adaptation to prey defenses, overwhelming numerical superiority, and complete focus on consumption of resources. The swarm is not trying to conquer your worlds or rule your people. They are trying to eat you." Representative Vrex, the insect-like delegate from the Korthian Empire, made clicking sounds that indicated deep thought among his people. "If they are like predators, Vrex asked. Then what do you suggest we do? All predators have some weakness that their prey can exploit. General Taehyung, another human military officer, stepped forward to join the group at the center of the chamber. He was a younger man than Admiral Hyunwoo, but his eyes had the same hard look of someone who had seen real combat. The weakness of predators, General Taehyung said, is that they expect their prey to run away or hide or submit to being eaten. They are not prepared to fight prey that is more dangerous than they are. Another series of holographic images appeared, showing scenes that made the alien representatives even more uncomfortable than the previous ones. These images showed humans fighting against Earth's most dangerous predators, and winning. There were pictures of human hunters taking down massive bears and tigers with nothing but spears and determination. There were images of humans using fire and tools to drive off packs of wolves that should have been able to kill them easily. Most shocking of all, there were pictures of humans domesticating some of Earth's predators, turning wolves into dogs and using them as partners in hunting even more dangerous animals. Every species in this galaxy evolved on worlds where they were either the dominant predator or they learned to avoid predators through hiding and running, General Taehyung explained. Humans evolved on a world where we were weak, slow, and had no natural weapons, so we learned to be more creative, more violent, and more determined than anything that tried to eat us. Commander Soo-young had come down from the observer section to join the other humans. She carried with her a datapad containing information that would prove to be the most important intelligence the Galactic Council had received in centuries. We have been studying the Vorthak swarm's behavior patterns, she announced. Their bioships follow predictable hunting patterns. They swarm a target, absorb whatever energy weapons are used against them, adapt their defenses, and then move in for the kill. It is exactly like watching a pack of Earth predators hunt a herd of plant-eating animals. She activated a tactical display that showed the swarm's attack patterns compared to hunting behaviors of Earth's predators. The problem is that all of your civilizations fight like prey animals, Commander Soo-young continued. You bunch together. For protection, you use defensive tactics, and when you are overwhelmed, you retreat or surrender. The swarm's biology is designed to counter exactly these behaviors. Senator Quilop from the Peaceful Worlds Alliance stood up, his tentacle-like arms waving in what was clearly distress among his people. Are you suggesting that we should become as violent and savage as these creatures? He asked, his translator converting his emotional state into a worried tone. Our civilizations have spent thousands of years moving beyond the need for violence. We have created societies based on cooperation, diplomacy, and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Admiral Hyunwoo turned to face Senator Quilop directly, and his expression was not unkind, but was absolutely serious. Senator, he said quietly, your peaceful civilizations exist because you have never encountered a threat that wanted to eat you instead of negotiate with you. The Vorthak swarm does not care about your diplomacy or your cooperation or your peaceful intentions. They care about consuming your biomass and using your world's resources to create more of themselves. Dr. Minji stepped forward again, this time carrying a biological scanner that she had been using to analyze the swarm's remains from previous battles. We have analyzed tissue samples from destroyed Vorthak bioships, she announced. Their cellular structure is designed for rapid adaptation and energy absorption. They can literally eat energy weapons and use that energy to strengthen their own defenses and weapons. She paused to let the implications of this information sink in. But they have never encountered kinetic weapons, physical projectiles that cause damage through impact rather than energy transfer. Their biology has no mechanism for adapting to being hit by solid objects traveling at high speed. General Quelix was shaking his head in what was obviously disbelief. Kinetic weapons, he repeated, his voice filled with contempt. You are talking about throwing rocks at them. Not rocks, General Taehyung replied with a slight smile. Uranium slugs fired from electromagnetic rails at 20% of light speed. Nuclear warheads designed to cause maximum radiation damage to biological tissue. Projectile weapons loaded with chemical payloads that are specifically designed to be toxic to organic compounds. The alien representatives were looking at each other with expressions that their translators were having difficulty converting. The concepts the humans were describing were so far outside their understanding of civilized warfare that many of them were struggling to process the information. Captain Minho had also joined the group of humans at the center of the chamber. The Sol system had been transformed into something that would have terrified every peaceful civilization in the galaxy if they had truly understood what they were seeing. What had once been quiet shipyards and research stations were now blazing, with activity as humanity prepared for a kind of war that the galaxy had never witnessed before. Captain Yunji walked through the main hangar bay of the Tess Indomitable, one of humanity's newest warships. The ship had been built in secret over the past 10 years, using technologies that Earth scientists had developed specifically for fighting enemies that energy weapons could not stop. Around her, human soldiers and technicians were loading weapons and supplies that would have been banned as war crimes on any civilized world. The reporter following her was a nervous creature named Quillex from the Zinthari Federation. His people looked somewhat like tall, thin humans, but their skin was pale blue and they had large black eyes that could see much more of the light spectrum than human eyes could. Quillex had been assigned by the Galactic Council to document humanity's contribution to the war effort, but he was clearly having second thoughts about his assignment. Captain Yunji, Quillex said, his translator converting his worried tone into something approaching fear. Could you explain what those devices are? My scanners are detecting massive amounts of radioactive material. Captain Yunji followed his gaze to where human technicians were carefully loading torpedo-shaped objects into launch tubes built into the ship's hull. Each torpedo was about 3 meters long and painted with warning symbols that even aliens could understand meant extremely dangerous. Those are fusion warheads, Captain Yunji replied casually, as if she was discussing the weather. Each one contains enough nuclear material to destroy a small moon. We have loaded 400 of them on this ship alone. Quillex made a sound that his translator could not convert into any known language. His large black eyes were staring at the nuclear weapons with an expression of pure horror. 400 nuclear weapons on a single ship, he repeated slowly, as if he could not believe what he was hearing. Captain, the entire Zinthari Federation military has only 12 nuclear devices, and those are considered emergency weapons that would only be used if our entire civilization was facing extinction. The Vorthak swarm is trying to eat every living thing in the galaxy, Captain Yunji pointed out. I would say that qualifies as a situation where our entire civilization is facing extinction. She gestured for Quillex to follow her to another section of the hangar, where different types of weapons were being loaded. These were longer and thinner than the nuclear torpedoes, and they were being handled with even more care by the human technicians. These are kinetic penetrators, Captain Yunji explained. Solid uranium slugs that will be fired from electromagnetic rails at speeds approaching 20% of light velocity. When they hit a bioship, they will punch through the hull and continue traveling through the entire length of the vessel, destroying everything in their path. Quillex was taking notes on his recording device, but his hands were shaking. His species had never developed weapons designed purely for destruction. Even their most powerful military devices were created with the intention of disabling enemy vessels so that crews could be rescued and conflicts could be resolved diplomatically. How many of these kinetic weapons does your ship carry? He asked. 60,000 rounds for the main railguns, Captain Yunji replied, plus another 100,000 rounds for the secondary batteries. And before you ask, yes, we have enough power generation capacity to fire all of them. They moved to another section of the hangar where human soldiers were checking equipment that looked like nothing Quillex had ever seen before. The humans wore armor that was black and angular, designed more like the shell of some dangerous insect than the bright ceremonial uniforms that most galactic militaries preferred. This is a standard Terran combat suit, explained Sergeant Kyung-soo, a young man who looked like he had been born to wear military equipment. The armor is made from layered ceramics and metals that can stop projectiles and energy weapons. The power system can run for 72 hours without recharging, and the built-in weapon systems include projectile weapons, chemical sprayers, and close combat tools. Quillex examined the suit more closely and noticed that what he had thought were decorative elements were actually weapons. There were small projectile launchers built into the forearms, chemical dispensers in the chest section, and what looked like retractable blades in the hands. Your soldiers are armed like individual tanks, Quilex observed. Our soldiers are going to be fighting enemies that want to eat them, Sergeant Kyung-soo replied matter-of-factly. We want them to be able to kill anything that tries. The tour continued through sections of the ship that were dedicated to weapons and equipment that violated every treaty and convention that governed warfare among civilized species. There were biological weapons designed to poison organic tissue, chemical weapons that would burn through living matter like acid, and devices that Quilex could not even identify, but that obviously caused his scanners to register massive danger warnings. Meanwhile, in a different part of the Sol system, Colonel Sang-woo was overseeing the final preparations of humanity's most classified military project. The facility was built inside a large asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a training center and laboratory. The official name was Advanced Combat Research Facility, but everyone who worked there called it by its informal designation, the Forge. Inside the Forge, human volunteers were being transformed into something that was no longer entirely human. The process was called Project Berserker, and it involved genetic modifications, cybernetic implants, and psychological conditioning that pushed the human mind and body beyond their natural limits. Dr. Hana stood in the observation deck looking down at the main training floor where 30 men and women were running through combat exercises. To an outside observer, they might have looked like normal humans, but Dr. Hana knew that every one of them had been changed in ways that would be considered impossible by galactic medical science. Their bones had been replaced with metallic composites that were stronger than steel but lighter than natural bone. Their muscles had been enhanced with synthetic fibers that could generate 3 times the force of natural human muscle tissue. Their nervous systems had been augmented with computer interfaces that allowed them to process information and react to threats faster than any natural creature could. But the most important changes were the ones that could not be seen or measured. These volunteers had been psychologically conditioned to fight without fear, without hesitation, and without mercy. They had volunteered to become living weapons because they understood that the survival of their species might depend on their willingness to become monsters. How are they performing? Colonel Sang-woo asked as he joined Dr. Hana at the observation window. Better than our best projections, Dr. Hana replied, indicating the data displays that showed the results of the training exercises. Their reaction times are now faster than most alien species' computer-assisted targeting systems. Their strength and endurance exceed anything that biological evolution should be able to produce, and their psychological profiles show complete dedication to the mission. On the training floor below, the enhanced soldiers were fighting against robotic opponents that had been programmed to simulate Vorthak bioship defenses. The robots used energy weapons and adaptation protocols that matched the swarm's known capabilities, and they were designed to be nearly impossible to defeat using conventional tactics. The enhanced humans were winning every engagement. They moved with speed and coordination that seemed almost supernatural. When the robots adapted to one type of attack, the humans instantly switched to different weapons and tactics. When energy weapons were used against them, they simply absorbed the damage and continued fighting. When the robots tried to overwhelm them with numbers, the humans fought back with a level of violence and determination that the robotic systems could not process or counter. They are no longer entirely human, Dr. Hana said quietly, watching as one of the enhanced soldiers literally tore apart a robot with his bare hands. We have created something new, something that can fight enemies that want to destroy all organic life in the galaxy. Colonel Sang-woo nodded, but his expression was serious and somewhat sad. They volunteered, he said. Every single one of them. They knew what they were giving up, and they chose to sacrifice their humanity to save humanity. Back on the TES Indomitable, Captain Yoonji was showing Quilex the ship's main weapon systems. The bridge of the human warship looked nothing like the bridges of galactic military vessels, which were usually bright, clean spaces designed for coordination and communication between different crew members. The human ship's bridge was dark and angular, with displays and controls that were designed for rapid response in combat situations. Every surface was covered with weapons controls, targeting systems, and damage assessment displays. It looked less like the command center of A civilized military vessel and more like the control room of some vast machine designed purely for destruction. This is our main fire control system. The edge of the Kepler system erupted in a display of horror that would be remembered in galactic history as the moment when the universe learned what true predators looked like. The Vorthak swarm came out of hyperspace like a living nightmare, made real, their bioships so numerous that they blocked out the light from distant stars. Each bioship was a creature the size of a city, its hull pulsing with organic rhythms that could be detected by sensors from millions of kilometers away. The smallest vessels were still larger than the biggest warships that most galactic civilizations had ever built, and the largest bioships were so massive that they had their own gravitational fields. But it was not their size that made them terrifying. It was the way they moved. They did not fly through space like mechanical vessels following programmed courses. They swam through the void like predatory fish following the scent of prey, their movements coordinated by some vast biological intelligence that spanned the entire swarm. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Tess Ragnarok, humanity's flagship, watching the enemy approach on the main tactical display. Around him, the combined fleets of 17 different galactic civilizations had assembled to make what many believed would be their final stand against the swarm. The alien fleets formed, neat, orderly formations that reflected thousands of years of civilized military doctrine. Energy shields shimmered around sleek vessels that had been designed more for show than for killing. Their weapons were powerful but clean, devices meant to disable rather than destroy, to win battles without unnecessary casualties. At the center of this massive fleet, dark and angular against the stars, hung the ships of humanity's Deathworlder Armada. There were only 200 human vessels compared to the thousands of alien ships, but every human warship was a masterpiece of destructive engineering that had been built by a species that understood killing in ways the galaxy had never imagined. "Admiral," reported Commander Su-young from her position at the tactical station. "Long-range sensors are detecting approximately 47 million bioships in the main swarm formation. Mass calculations suggest a total biomass equivalent to several hundred Earth-sized planets." "Energy signatures?" Admiral Hyunwoo asked calmly, as if he was discussing weather patterns instead of the largest military force in galactic history. "Massive and growing," Commander Su-young replied. "The bioships are absorbing energy from background radiation, cosmic rays, and each other. Their power levels are increasing as they approach our position." Captain Minho, commanding the Tess Indomitable, checked in over the fleet communication channel. "Ragnarok, this is Indomitable. All human vessels report weapon systems fully charged and ready for engagement, kinetic rounds loaded, nuclear warheads armed, chemical payloads prepared for deployment." Similar reports came in from the other human ships. The TES Retribution reported that her enhanced soldiers were ready for boarding operations. The TES Vengeance confirmed that her biological warfare systems were online. The TES Apocalypse announced that her experimental weapons were functioning within acceptable parameters. General Quellix's voice came over the fleet-wide communication channel from his flagship, the Altarian vessel Harmony of Peace. "All vessels prepare for long-range energy bombardment. Target the largest bioships first. Remember, our goal is to disable their command and control systems, not to cause unnecessary destruction." Admiral Hyunwoo activated his own communication channel to address the human fleet privately. "All Terran vessels, you heard the General's orders. Ignore them completely. Our goal is not to disable the enemy. Our goal is to kill every single one of them before they can adapt to our tactics. Fire at will and do not stop firing until there is nothing left alive in this system." The battle began exactly as Admiral Hyunwoo had predicted it would. The alien fleets opened fire with their advanced energy weapons, sending brilliant beams of coherent light and focused plasma toward the approaching bioships. The attacks were beautiful to watch, streams of pure energy that lit up space like artificial stars. For a few minutes, it seemed like the galactic fleets might actually succeed. The energy weapons struck the bioships and caused visible damage, burning holes in their organic hulls and disrupting their formations. Several of the smaller bioships were destroyed completely, their remains drifting in space like the corpses of massive sea creatures. But then, the adaptation began. The bioships that had been damaged by the energy weapons began to change. Their hulls grew thicker and more reflective. Their internal structures rearranged themselves to better absorb and redirect energy attacks. Within 10 minutes of the battle's start, the same weapons that had initially caused significant damage were becoming less and less effective. "This is impossible," General Quelix broadcast over the fleet channel, his voice filled with growing panic. "They are adapting faster than our computers can calculate new firing solutions." Admiral Hyunwoo called Speaker Thyron from the Council. "Command ship, perhaps now would be an appropriate time for your forces to demonstrate these alternative tactics you have described." Admiral Hyunwoo smiled the same predatory smile that had made the alien representatives uncomfortable back in the council chambers. "Gladly," he replied. "All Terran vessels, commence firing." What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries, assuming there were any historians left alive to study it. The human ships opened fire with weapons that the bioships had never encountered before and had no evolutionary programming to counter. The first salvo came from the railguns. Uranium slugs weighing several tons each were accelerated to 20% of light speed and fired at the bioships from ranges that the swarm sensors could barely detect. The projectiles struck their targets before the bioships even knew they were under attack. Unlike energy weapons, which the bioships could absorb and adapt to, the kinetic rounds simply punched through organic hulls like bullets through paper. Each projectile carried so much kinetic energy that it continued traveling through the entire length of the bioship, destroying everything in its path before exiting through the other side. The largest bioships, creatures that were several kilometers long and had survived energy bombardments that could have sterilized planets, were killed instantly by single kinetic rounds that cost less to manufacture than a civilian transport shuttle. But the railguns were just the beginning. The human ships followed up with nuclear torpedoes that detonated inside the bioships' hulls, filling their internal spaces with radiation that poisoned their organic systems faster than they could regenerate. Chemical warheads released toxins that were specifically designed to be fatal to biological tissue, causing the bioships to literally dissolve from the inside out. Captain Yunji was coordinating the attack from the TES Indomitable when she noticed something that made her smile with savage satisfaction. "Commander," she called to her tactical officer, "are you seeing what I'm seeing in Sector 7? "Yes, Captain," Lieutenant Jihoon replied, his voice filled with amazement. "The bioships are trying to adapt to our kinetic weapons. They are thickening their hulls and rearranging their internal structures. And what is happening to their adaptation efforts? They are making themselves better targets for our nuclear warheads," Lieutenant Jihoon reported. "The thicker hulls are containing the nuclear explosions longer, causing more internal damage. And the structural rearrangements are creating weak points that our chemical weapons can exploit more effectively. The bioships were trapped in an evolutionary dead end that no Earth predator had ever faced. Every adaptation they made to counter one type of human weapon made them more vulnerable to the other types of human weapons. They were fighting an enemy that did not rely on any single tactic or technology, but instead used multiple different methods of killing simultaneously. But the most terrifying part of the battle had not yet begun. Captain Minho activated his ship's boarding systems and spoke over the internal communication channel to his enhanced soldiers. "Berserkers, you are cleared for boarding operations. Target the largest bioships that are still showing life signs. Remember your training. No mercy, no prisoners, no survival for the enemy." The enhanced soldiers who had been created in Project Berserker launched from the human ships in small, fast assault craft that were designed to penetrate bioship hulls and deliver their cargo of genetically modified human warriors directly into the enemy's internal spaces. These soldiers were no longer entirely human. They had been changed in ways that allowed them to survive in environments that would kill normal humans and to fight against enemies that no normal human could face. But they had retained the most important human characteristic: the absolute determination to kill anything that threatened their species. Inside the bioships, the enhanced soldiers fought battles that were unlike anything that had ever been recorded in galactic military history. They used weapons that had been designed specifically to cause maximum trauma to biological tissue. molecular blades that could cut through organic matter at the cellular level, projectile weapons loaded with ammunition that delivered toxins directly into living systems, and close combat tools that allowed them to literally tear apart their enemies with their enhanced strength. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Ambassador Jiwan stood at the center of the chamber, but this time the silence was not filled with condescension or amusement. It was filled with something that most of the alien representatives had never experienced before: genuine fear of another species. The holographic displays around the chamber showed images from the aftermath of what galactic historians were already calling the Kepler Massacre. Floating debris fields that stretched across entire solar systems, composed of the remains of bioships that had been torn apart by weapons that most civilized species had never imagined could exist. The final casualty report from the engagement, Ambassador G1 announced, her voice carrying a new authority that no one in the chamber dared to question, shows complete elimination of the Vorthak swarm. Total enemy casualties are estimated at 47.3 million bioships and approximately 2 billion individual organisms. She paused to let those numbers sink in. 2 billion. It was more than the total population of most galactic civilizations. Human casualties, she continued, were 4,012 personnel killed, with an additional 800 wounded. 17 ships suffered damage. 3 were destroyed completely. Council Speaker Thyron's crystalline form was flickering with colors that indicated something between amazement and terror. His species had sophisticated mathematical abilities, and he could calculate the implications of those casualty ratios better than most of the other representatives. Ambassador G1, he said, his voice carrying a tone of respect that had never been present before. Are you saying that human forces achieved a kill ratio of approximately 500,000 to 1? That is correct, Speaker Thyron. The silence that followed was broken by Representative Rex from the Korthian Empire. His insect-like form was making clicking sounds that his translator was having difficulty converting into words that other species could understand. This level of efficiency in warfare, Rex finally managed to say, it is completely unprecedented in galactic history. How is such a thing possible? Admiral Hyunwoo stepped forward to answer, and every alien in the chamber instinctively focused their attention on him. The casual dismissal and condescension that they had shown toward humans just weeks earlier had been replaced by the kind of careful attention that prey animals give to apex predators. Representative Rex, Admiral Hyunwoo replied calmly. The answer is simple. We were fighting an enemy that we understood, using methods that they could not adapt to, with weapons that they had no defense against. General Quelix of the Altarian Republic stood up from his seat, his forearms moving in gestures that indicated deep thought among his people. Admiral, he said, his voice much more respectful than it had been during their previous conversation, I must ask a question that I believe many of us are thinking. If human military forces are this effective against enemies like the Vorthak swarm, what does this mean for the rest of us? The question hung in the air like a threat that no one wanted to acknowledge. If humans could destroy a force that had consumed entire civilizations, what would happen if they ever decided that the other galactic species were enemies instead of allies? Ambassador Jiwan answered before Admiral Hyunwoo could respond. General Quelix, humanity has no interest in conquering or harming the civilizations of the Galactic Council. We joined this community because we believe in cooperation and peaceful coexistence between different species. She gestured to the tactical displays that were still showing images from the battle. But we also believe that sometimes peace can only be preserved through the willingness to fight those who would destroy it. The Vorthak swarm could not be negotiated with or reasoned with. They could only be stopped by force. Dr. Minji stepped forward to address the scientific implications of what had happened. The biological analysis of the swarm's remains has provided valuable information about their origins and capabilities, she announced. They were not a naturally evolved species. They were created by some unknown civilization as a biological weapon, designed specifically to consume and destroy other forms of life. This revelation sent a wave of shocked sounds through the alien representatives. The idea that an entire species could be artificially created as a weapon was something that most galactic civilizations had never considered. The important thing, To understand, Dr. Minji continued, is that the swarm was designed to counter the military technologies and tactics used by advanced civilizations. They were specifically evolved to be invulnerable to energy weapons and coordinated fleet tactics. But they were not designed to counter the kind of warfare that humans learned on Earth, added General Tae-hyung. They had no evolutionary programming to deal with kinetic weapons, nuclear radiation, chemical toxins, or close combat situations. Commander Soo-young activated a new set of displays that showed tactical analyses of the battle. More importantly, she said, they were not prepared to fight an enemy that used multiple different types of weapons simultaneously. Most galactic civilizations focus on developing more and more advanced versions of the same basic technologies. Humans develop dozens of completely different ways to kill the same target. The alien representatives were studying the tactical data with expressions that their translators were converting into various forms of amazement and concern. They were beginning to understand that humanity's approach to warfare was fundamentally different from their own. Senator Quailop from the Peaceful Worlds Alliance raised one of his tentacle-like arms to request permission to speak. I must ask, he said hesitantly, what happens now? The immediate threat has been eliminated, but the methods used to eliminate it have changed the balance of power in the galaxy considerably. This was the question that everyone had been thinking about, but no one had wanted to ask directly. Humanity had just demonstrated that they possessed military capabilities that far exceeded anything that the established galactic civilizations could match. Speaker Thyron's crystalline form was flashing with the colors that indicated he was prepared to make an official pronouncement on behalf of the Galactic Council. The Council recognizes, he said formally, that the survival of galactic civilization has been ensured through the actions of the Terran Defense Force. We also recognize that the military capabilities demonstrated by humanity represent a significant change in the strategic balance of our community. He paused, his form flickering as he processed the political implications of what he was about to say. Therefore, the Galactic Council formally requests that humanity accept the position of Chief Military Coordinator for all Council defense operations. We also request that human military advisors be assigned to assist member civilizations in developing more effective defense strategies. The chamber erupted in sounds of agreement from the alien representatives. What had started as a grudging acknowledgement of humanity's effectiveness had become an active desire to learn from human military expertise. But perhaps the most significant change was already happening outside the council chambers. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had previously looked down on humanity as primitive newcomers were now seeking defensive pacts and military alliances with Earth. The Zenthari Federation, which had once refused to allow human ships to dock at their stations, had sent an urgent diplomatic message requesting immediate military cooperation agreements. The Altarian Republic had asked for human military advisors to help redesign their fleet tactics. Even the proud Draconian Confederacy had quietly inquired about purchasing human-manufactured weapons. Captain Minho stood in the observation deck of a space station orbiting Nexus Prime, watching as ships from dozens of different civilizations arrived to begin what was being called the Terran Military Exchange Program. Young aliens were coming from across the galaxy to study at the newly established Human War College, where they would learn tactics and strategies that their own civilizations had never developed. It is strange, observed Captain Yunji, who had joined him to watch the arriving ships. 6 months ago, they thought we were too primitive to contribute anything to galactic civilization. Now they are sending their best military officers to learn from us. Fear is a powerful teacher, Captain Minho replied. They have seen what we can do to enemies who threaten us. Now they want to make sure we consider them friends instead of threats. But the most important changes were happening in the deeper parts of space where human ships now patrolled the frontier regions that had been abandoned after the swarm's attacks. The TES Indomitable and dozens of other human warships had been assigned to permanent patrol duties, watching for any signs of other threats that might emerge from the unknown regions beyond the galaxy's rim. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the TES Ragnarok as it conducted a routine patrol of the former Vorthak hunting grounds. The bioships were gone, but the debris fields they had left behind served as a reminder of what could happen when predatory species encountered prey that was more dangerous than they were. "Admiral," reported Commander Su-Yung from her sensor station. "Long-range scanners are detecting some unusual energy signatures from the Outer Rim territories. Patterns consistent with artificial construction, but not matching any known galactic technologies."